Hey everybody, I have something a little different. I know I usually do projector stuff, but this one's going to be totally different. Obviously it works with a projector, but this is a mod for Nintendo 64. Nintendo 64's video output, AV output, is only composite, meaning it uses the old RCA cables. It has analog video and audio, right, left, and video. Nowadays, it's a lot more preferred to use HDMI. Well, the Nintendo, as it stands, does not support HDMI. So this company makes an HDMI board. These guys right here. UltraHDMI, ultrahdmi.net. Last time I checked, they were still back ordered on boards, but I'm sure they'll get them in, and this video will show you how to put one in if you have a Nintendo 64 that you want to run on HDMI. It'll upscale so that it'll work. This is the cable that you have to install. This is how they ship it to you. I had a few cables in here. So you have to get that out of the flat flex carrier that it comes in. And it's got some tiny spots that you have to be careful with. You don't want to go too vigorous at it. So now that that's separated, you can see there's the flat flex there. These are going to get bent. Actually, it's going to be, yeah, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. There we go. This is the side that goes on the chip. That's the side that goes to the HDMI board. One of those ways, I forget exactly. So, first thing we're going to do is open the Nintendo up. Actually, first thing I'm going to do is put this back in its static bag. Actually, we'll go over it real quick so you can see what's going on here. It's got an Altera FPGA and HDMI driver chip, power supply, another power supply. And what's that? Oh, that's memory. Okay. So the Altera must be taking the signal from the chip and then changing it into HDMI. I'm sure I just pretty much stated the obvious. And this is now trash. And that's where it shall go. And this, which is next, I'm going to put that safely out of the way. So here's the Nintendo. It's a Nintendo 64. I think this is a special edition one. Yeah, from Japan. So it has these security screws in it. Those, I don't know what the technical name is, but inverted Torx almost. Here's the bit. It's a 4.5mm security bit. And then I just use my screw gun. And they pop right out. And now all the screws are out. Oh, bumped the camera. And now the top will come off. You can see I took all those out. So now the top, there's nothing else holding it down. Oh, actually I take that back. It has the, I don't know if that's a memory card or if that's one of those pass-through. Let's pop that out. Yeah, I don't know why that doesn't just pop out. There we go. Yeah, this is just one of those jumpers that passes the signal right through. That's for a memory card. Alright, now the top lifts off. There we go. Yep. little dusty inside, not too bad. Set the top back here. Yep, not bad at all. And where we have to get to is underneath all of this. So this whole thing is going to come out. But you don't have to take out every single screw. We'll start with the AV connector. And then move my helping hands out of the way. And then power. Then top shielding. And I found that I'm able to kind of lift this all out, at least the screws with the machine screws. These screws I take out and put in the dish. But the machine screws, I leave them in there because it actually helps when I put the board back down. Helps kind of line it up. See? So it's getting there. But I'm pretty sure I still have to take out... Yep, because I want to get this off. I know this comes off, actually. Let's get that one. And that one. Oh, right. And these two. These two you have to be careful with. When you take these two out, the metal can be tight, and it'll try to bend the shielding and possibly put stress on the connector, and that's what you want to avoid, is putting stress on the connector. So take these guys out. Don't leave them in. Then let's try and... Yeah, there we go. Let's pop them loose. Let's set those up there. Let's see what do we have. There it goes. And now we can see the fun stuff. This is all the, this is the brain down here. This is the stuff that does everything. You can see the marks from the thermal pads that go through to the heat sink. This is a pretty neat design. You know, this is 1989. That's, well, it's 2017 now, almost the end. So that's, you know, that's almost 20 years ago, 17, 18, 19 years ago. And, you know, good surface mount technology for the time. And this is it's a pretty neat device. Here we have 4 gig of, I think that, yeah, 4 gig of DRAM. As I said, that little thing that was plugged in goes in there. It just jumps through the pins. The ones with the memory packs actually talk into that bus. Then you have the RDP. This is the reality coprocessor. It has the reality drawing processor inside of it. This, I believe, yeah, this does all the graphics work. This does the heavy lifting for the graphics. And then that's the MIPS R4300i CPU. That was, this was pretty revolutionary at its time, you know, for what it does. And there's lots of information. Other people have done a bunch of teardown videos on these, so I'm not going to go through and talk about everything. But, you know, we have power supply over here. Main power comes in there. We have 12 volts and 5 volts, I believe, that come in. And then filter caps here. This is actually, this cable is an old cable that I replaced on one. And the cable, you'll see when I put it on, basically goes here. And then, you know, power comes from there. And then there's some signal that comes from the front. Never actually looked at the pinout on these. But You'll see when I put it together. But this is the general idea. The first thing we're going to do for putting in the HDMI board is actually fit the board. I find the soldering part, that's all well and good, but you want to fit the board in first, and that's the mechanical part of this install. So I'm going to carefully take the main board out, making sure to keep that with it. This has to go back in the same time as everything, otherwise you have to try to flex the case, and that's just a pain. You don't want to do that. So let me put this safely on the shelf. The HDMI board is designed to fit in here, in this area. In fact, it might be easier to visualize if I do it from this view. So the board is going to drop in like so. Well, not quite like so, because I don't have the notch cut, which is what we're going to size up. And I find that these silly things, these little, they get in the way. So I'm just going to lift it up now for the moment, because what we need to do is kind of get this into position. Come on. So we can see where the edges of the HDMI port is going to line up, because we're going to have to notch this right there. So then what I do, I get it lined up, and I'm just going to make a little line in the plastic. Yeah. I usually try to cut these small, and then we take the board out. I'm going to put the board away. I try to cut the first hole small, because you can always make it wider. And this is really, in my opinion, one of the most critical parts of the install, because if you don't get this right, it's just going to look bad. Sure, it might work, but you're always going to know that that notch isn't cut right. So let me get the tool that's going to do this. I have a tool that's perfect for it. You just slide the material in that you want to cut. You can see it's got an angled blade that comes down on a hardened anvil. So you can just kind of chew away. They work on pretty much everything. So let's see if I can get a view. Oops, not really. Well, I'm going to kind of demonstrate, because I don't want to screw this up, so it's going to have to do it off camera. Oh, wrong way. Zoom back out. And focus. I'm going to line up with the edge with that mark I made, and just go all the way in, get it straight, and squeeze. There you go. Now it took a chew, so I'm going to do the rest off camera. Yeah, you can see now it's down flush. That's what we need. One of the little bits that come out of the cutters. So after that, we're going to clean that plastic up. So I take the HDMI board out, just kind of a gentle wiggling. It is kind of a pressure fit. You don't secure this into here. It just sits in there, and then there's a pad, a heatsink pad that goes on top that pushes down. So it's purely a mechanical fit. So what you're probably going to notice, or I hope you notice, if you have a discerning eye, is that plastic looks a little raw. And I'm not going to leave it like that. I'm going to use my hot air iron that I usually use for soldering, with the temperature turned down to about, this is, what kind of plastic is this? I have it down to about 220. Yeah, that's what I thought. This is ABS. It even has it in there. And ABS melts at around 220, 230 C. So I have it right at the bottom, like at 220, because I don't want to melt it. I want to see how the color, that white, just want to kind of melt the surface just a little bit. Smooth it. And then I have this tool. This is a sculpting tool. It's a knife. I use it sometimes for cleaning the edges. The nipper doesn't get them quite right. And this is just to get any little shavings off or loose bits. A little more heat. One more shot, and that's it. That's all I'm going to do. I don't go nuts on that because I don't want to overdo it. Just want it to look clean. Get rid of as much of that white scratch as possible. Exactly, Larry. Exactly right. My cat's helping today, or tonight. So, now that I'm happy with this, we can permanently, or hopefully this is the last time, but I can figure I can put this in now. And sometimes I find if I lift up on the bottom a little, just kind of flex the case, it'll help it kind of drop down. It's a tight fit between there. But it's a nice design. The guy who did this did a real nice job. I'm pretty sure it's just, somebody that knows what they're doing, but it wasn't like a big company that did it. So, alright, so that's in. Now we are going to put the main board back in. And before I do that, these guys that I took out to fit the board in need to go back in. And the pad I was telling you about that holds the whole assembly into place needs to go in. Let me see if I can just kind of show you what I'm talking about before I actually do it. So you'll notice I took that plastic bit off that I said never to take off. But this is going to push down on top of the connector, and that's going to have this very squishy pad. And then behind it, on the FPGA, I'm going to put that pad, because that should sit against the metal. Now, I've heard numerous anecdotes that this pad is not necessary, that the design doesn't get that hot, but I'm not really sure. And I figure, why not? More cooling's a good thing. You're not saving that much time by not putting it on, I figure. And then the purely mechanical rather, pad. Now we'll have to install the cable, but we have access to that connector. So that's how you physically install it. It's pretty straightforward. Stay tuned for part 2 when we install the ribbon cable. Leave a comment if you have a question. You can PM me too if you have a question. And all the usual stuff. Rate, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. So see you at part 2.